Is this not the cutest little bookmark that you have ever seen? I mean, look at this tassel. It's like, I was at the bookstore, I have a gazillion bookmarks, but I saw this and I'm just like, yes, I need you in my life. Hey beautiful people, my name is Kristen. Thank you for stopping by my channel. I really appreciate you spending a couple minutes of your day with me as I discuss my books that I read in the month of March of 2022. And it's not a huge number of books, but the starting book was an accomplishment, and that was War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. So I do appreciate and love Leo Tolstoy, and this book was very intimidating. This copy is 1,350 pages, and I was also, of course, intimidated by the fact that there is war going on in Russia. So this is looking at Napoleon invading Russia, and it also takes a serious deep dive look into the lives of the aristocracy, of the Russian families, of the social life, so hence kind of the peace side. And it balances, I thought, really well. At first I was going back and forth, like there's too much of the socialite stuff, then there's too much war stuff, but in the end, as you're reading through this massive novel, I actually came to really appreciate that going back and forth. And I particularly personally love the kind of first chapter of each section was almost always Tolstoy's kind of reminiscing philosophical thought, particularly around how history is recorded. So he does a brilliant job of including some kind of maps of the different families, so because sometimes there's similar names, but you can go back and look at, you know, who belongs to what family and kind of help keep track of it in your head. And just like most classics, it has that kind of interesting Downton Abbey drama of, you know, marriages are predominantly about land ownership and power and money and wealth, as opposed to love, and where is that balance, and you know, how do you decide? And a lot of times the women are not given a lot of depth because that's almost exclusively what they're after or believe in. But Tolstoy has a couple interesting, you know, female characters in there as well. Although it was interesting because the kind of two main characters, there's so many characters, but I would say Pierre and Natasha are kind of the ones that we follow throughout the whole thing. And those were probably two of my least favorite, just me personally, but I appreciated how they related to all the other characters. And I really, really, again, genuinely appreciate Tolstoy's look at philosophy about history and how it's recorded and how it's told, because that's something I've been really thinking about. How are we more mindful of hearing both sides of a story to get a better understanding of the fullness of the situation? Even if we disagree with one of the sides strongly, it's helpful to hear it. It's helpful to know it. So I thought this was well worth reading. For how long it is, I didn't feel like it was particularly cumbersome, or like a lot of long novels I go, well, that could have been said a lot shorter, or that didn't have to go on all those rabbit trails. But this one I actually appreciated just about everything. There were some things obviously I'm less interested in than others, but I totally recommend it. I'm leaning towards that being about a 4-star out of 5. It's not a 5-star read for me, but I think it deserves 4 stars. So I think I'm going with 4 stars on that rating, if you will. And then my other classic that I read, because this is now 52 years old, Kirk Vonnegut wrote Slaughterhouse 5, and this is, I didn't know what it was at all. I really didn't. I just knew that it came out the same year I was born, and that was a classic, and that it's fairly short, which would be good after reading such a big one. But I'm thinking this isn't exactly my cup of tea, but I appreciate a lot about it. It's a story that's kind of told first person-ish with like also a narrator talking as well. And it's one of those almost comical, a lot of people call this witty or funny, but the serious matter is very very heavy. He was a prisoner of war, and so it was basically German war camp kind of things, mistreatment, a lot of death obviously. And so it's kind of told from like this post-traumatic stress disorder diary, rambling, telling the story of not really just the war, but he time travels and he thinks it's legit time travel. And he also thinks that part of his story is that he was abducted by this alien race, and he's using what he learned from them, their philosophy of life, to try to make sense of his life and world. So it's very interesting. I appreciate the uniqueness of it. I thought it was very clever. I think it's pretty easy to read as far as reading level and understanding what's going on, but making humor of something that's so heavy is a little bit of a struggle for me, I guess. But I really appreciated it. That's what I have to say about that. So if that sounds like something you would really appreciate or be interested in, I do recommend it for those people. I also, talking about heavy topics, read the fiction book Razorblade Tears by S.E. Cosby, and this is the story of two ex-cons, gentlemen whose meeting up in life was because their sons were murdered when they were also married to one another. The fathers did not support same-gender marriages, and this is kind of their look to not only bring some justice to their sons and their son's death, but also to make kind of peace with that issue. There's also racial tensions because one is white, one is black, and trying to understand each other's culture and how they're the same maybe on some economic levels or some educational struggles, but they're so different in other ways. And so there's a lot of books out there that are kind of doing these motifs, but sometimes it feels really pushed or forced, if you will. And I did feel like this one had a genuine, authentic feel to it, and I really appreciated that. It is extremely heavy on action and violence because it's two ex-cons going into the shady underworld to try to bring their own vigilante justice. So that's not always my jam, but this one I really appreciated. Give it another 4 stars. It's not a 5-star read for me personally, just because of struggling with those high crime and things that I know happen, but I don't necessarily, I wish they didn't happen. How's that? So that was a really, really good read. And then for my nonfiction, I picked my shortest nonfiction on my to be read stack, The Terrible, Wonderful Reasons Why I Run Long Distances. Yes. And so this is a book that is short, easy, sweet, told in all cartoons. And basically the reason why this author runs is to not get fat. They eat poorly. They do not have a healthy lifestyle. They kind of, just have a very great sense of humor and are probably a wonderful, fun person to hang out with in real life. They run predominantly just to weight manage, and so that's why he runs, and it's just humorous look about it. It's a fun thing that took me, I think, maybe a little over an hour to actually sit down and read that and have a kind of a break from some of these other things that I was reading. My other nonfiction / new release was Tell Me Everything, Erica Krauss. So this is a true memoir of a woman who has a gift that she has that familiar, kind, friendly face. I don't know if there's a picture of her in this. There was when I looked online, but she basically gets witnesses to talk to her. And so she's kind of like a impromptu private investigator for the lawyer who is going after a university, not on criminal levels of date rapes and what do you call it, like hazing, if you will, fraternities making that point part of their initiation rites, but they're trying to actually persecute the university. So this was in the early 2000s. It is, there's not a whole lot of it online about the reality of that particular case. It turns out it was the University of Boulder, Colorado. But this is a discussion that's going on a lot of university campuses, right? And I did think it was really an interesting read. I thought that it was easy to follow along, and I did like the Erica and her life. I felt like it was a little slow and a little repetitive in parts. But I enjoyed it. And it made me think, and it made me actually get out my phone and look up some stuff and to question and to learn, which is kind of one of my main goals for nonfiction. So I'll give it a 3-star. I think that was worth reading, but it's not the kind of thing that you pick up and read again or get super excited like everybody needs to read this. But if you're interested in that kind of discussion or debate, or you've got skin in that game, so to speak, it's a good book and rendition of that. And then my favorite book read that I just did a reading vlog on is The Toll by Neal Shusterman. And I've been saying a lot about it, so I won't in this video, except for to say this is my 5-star for the month. I adore it. I can see that maybe it's not quite as good as book 1 and 2, but it's still 5-star. It's still absolutely great. I love the philosophy surrounding about it, how it makes you think why we believe what we believe, wrestling with what is life, where are the lines of how do we determine what's moral and good and right and even divine, what is science and just the way of the world and time, and all those kind of values wrestle with a story of basically a future society where there is no longer war or disease, and humans have had to instill a way to population control by deciding who's going to pass away when. So that's the whole thing about that. Totally action-packed, multiple things going on, beautiful characters that I got attached to, so many of them. Just love this. I look forward to reading more of this author's work. So those were the books that I read in the month of March. I hope that you are inspired to look into some of them. If you have recommendations or you want to tell me what you're reading, that would be lovely. I look forward to planning and filming my TBR for April soon. I hope that you will like, subscribe, come along, be part of this journey and community with me. I appreciate you. I hope you have some happy reading, y'all.